What if I told you that the most dangerous man in any room is the one who doesn't need to be there? While society screams at you to connect, network, and never be alone, there's a breed of man who has discovered something so terrifying to the system that they've labeled him broken, antisocial, dangerous. This man has cracked the code that keeps 99% of humanity enslaved, and he's done it by doing the one thing everyone fears most. He's learned to be completely, utterly alone. Not lonely, not isolated, but powerfully, deliberately solitary. Machiavelli warned us that everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are. But this man, he knows exactly who he is because he's had the balls to sit with himself when everyone else was running. Within the next 20 minutes, you'll discover why the man who thrives in solitude isn't just surviving. He's operating on a level of psychological mastery that makes him virtually untouchable. Problem agiidium, you were taught a lie so fundamental, so deeply embedded in your psyche, that questioning it feels like betrayal. They told you that human connection is everything. That being alone means something's wrong with you. That success is measured by how many people want to be around you, how busy your social calendar is, how quickly someone responds to your texts. They built an entire economic system around your fear of solitude. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in complete silence for more than 5 minutes without reaching for your phone? When did you last eat a meal without entertainment, music, or distraction? When did you last go a full day without seeking validation, approval, or recognition from another human being? You can't. And that's exactly how they want it. Every notification is designed to fracture your attention. Every social platform profits from your insecurity. Every connection app feeds on your terror of being alone with your own thoughts. They've weaponized your most basic human need and turned it against you. The result: you've become psychologically dependent on external sources for your most basic emotional needs. Your mood depends on who calls. Your self-worth fluctuates based on likes, comments, and reactions. Your identity is borrowed from the approval of people who don't even know your real name. You're not living your life. You're performing it. But here's what terrifies the system more than anything. What happens when someone breaks free? What happens when a man discovers that true power doesn't come from being needed by others, but from needing no one? He becomes ungovernable, uncontrollable, unmanipulable. And in a world built on psychological slavery, that makes him the most dangerous man alive. Here's the brutal truth they don't want you to understand. The man who has mastered solitude has access to a level of mental clarity that networked minds simply cannot achieve. Dostoevsky understood this when he wrote, "The best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure he never knows he's in prison." Most men are prisoners of other people's opinions, slaves to social validation, addicted to the dopamine hit of approval. But the solitary man, he's found the keys. While you're checking your phone 150 times a day, fragmenting your attention span into digital confetti, he's developing what psychologists call sustained attention, the ability to focus deeply on a single task for extended periods. This isn't just productivity porn. This is cognitive evolution. Research from MIT reveals that our brains operate in two distinct modes, the focused network and the default mode network. Most people today live in a fractured state between these two, never fully engaging either. But prolonged solitude forces the brain to strengthen both networks independently, creating what neuroscientists call enhanced cognitive flexibility. Translation: while your mind is scattered across a dozen different inputs, his is laser, focused, and surgically precise. The solitary man doesn't just think differently, he thinks deeper. Without the constant interruption of social obligations, his mind can pursue ideas to their logical conclusion. He can sit with uncomfortable truths until they reveal their secrets. He can explore thought territories that social minds avoid because they're too challenging, too controversial, or too real. Consider the great minds throughout history. Newton's laws of physics were discovered in solitude during plague isolation. Thorau's Walden emerged from deliberate isolation. Einstein called solitude the wellspring of creativity. These weren't accidents. They were the inevitable result of minds freed from the psychological pollution of constant social noise. But here's where it gets psychologically dangerous. The man who has mastered solitude begins to see through social games that others can't even recognize as games. He notices how people perform happiness on social media while drowning in private desperation. He sees how most conversations are just mutual ego-stroking sessions. He recognizes manipulation tactics that slide past socially dependent minds like water off a duck's back. This is why society fears him, not because he's antisocial, but because he's anti-bullshit. He can't be gaslit because he trusts his own perception more than group consensus. He can't be peer pressured because he's not seeking peer approval. He can't be socially controlled because he's not socially dependent. The psychological research is clear. People who are comfortable with solitude score higher on measures of emotional stability, creativity, and authentic self-expression. They're less susceptible to anxiety, depression, and the mood disorders that plague socially dependent personalities. Why? Because their emotional thermostat is internal, not external. Their sense of self isn't borrowed from others. It's owned, developed, and maintained from within. This creates what psychologists call psychological sovereignty, a state where your mental and emotional well-being is independent of external circumstances. While others ride the emotional roller coaster of social approval and rejection, he maintains steady equilibrium. The solitary man has discovered the ultimate life hack. You cannot control other people, but you can achieve complete mastery over your own mind. And once you control your mind, you control your reality. This isn't just philosophy, it's practical psychology. When you're not mentally dependent on others for validation, you can make decisions based on logic rather than emotion. You can pursue long-term goals without being derailed by short-term social pressures. You can become who you actually are instead of who others expect you to be. And that level of authentic self-expression, it's magnetic in ways that performance never can be. THEHDMPTRN manipulation IMUIA. There's a hidden pattern running through every successful empire, business, and power structure throughout history, and it's time you understood it. They all depend on psychologically dependent people to function. Think about it. Every dictatorship relies on citizens who need group approval more than individual truth. Every cult preys on people who fear solitude more than they fear deception. Every manipulative relationship succeeds because one person's need for connection outweighs their need for respect. But the man who has mastered solitude, he's developed what I call manipulation immunity. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that the most effective way to control people is to make them believe they need you more than you need them. Create dependency, and you create control. But what happens when someone needs nothing from you? They become uncontrollable. Let me show you how this works in practice. Consider the psychology of manipulation. Every manipulation tactic depends on exploiting emotional needs. Fear of rejection, need for approval, desire for belonging, terror of isolation. Remove those vulnerabilities and manipulation becomes impossible. The solitary man has systematically eliminated every psychological weakness that manipulators exploit. Fear of rejection gone. He's already chosen solitude over acceptance. Need for approval eliminated. He's learned to validate himself. Desire for belonging transcended. He belongs to himself first. Terror of isolation conquered. He's made peace with his own company. This creates a psychological profile that's virtually immune to the standard manipulation playbook. Try to make him jealous? He's not emotionally dependent on your attention. Try to guilt trip him? He's not seeking your approval. Try to threaten social exile? He's already chosen voluntary solitude. Here's where it gets really interesting. This immunity extends beyond personal relationships into every area of life. The solitary man can't be manipulated by advertising because he's not trying to impress anyone with his purchases. He can't be controlled by social media algorithms because he's not addicted to social validation. He can't be pressured by workplace politics because his identity isn't tied to corporate approval. Historical examples prove this pattern repeatedly. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, was also the most solitary. His meditations reveal a mind that found strength in solitude and wisdom in self-reflection. Nikola Tesla, one of history's greatest inventors, deliberately chose solitude over social comfort, leading to innovations that changed the world. But here's the really dangerous part. The solitary man doesn't just resist manipulation. He sees through it completely. When you're not emotionally invested in social games, you can observe them objectively. You notice how people use emotional manipulation instead of logical arguments. You recognize when someone's being fake, needy, or calculating. This creates what psychologists call social clarity, the ability to see social dynamics without being emotionally entangled in them. It's like watching a chess game from above instead of being trapped on the board as a piece. The result: the solitary man develops superior judgment about people. He can spot red flags that socially dependent minds miss because they're too busy seeking approval to notice warning signs. He can identify authentic people because he's learned to value authenticity over likability. He can build relationships based on mutual respect rather than mutual need. This drives manipulative people absolutely insane. They can't understand why their usual tactics don't work. They can't comprehend someone who doesn't need their approval or fear their rejection. They label him difficult, antisocial, or arrogant because they can't control him. But here's the psychological twist that makes this really powerful. The solitary man's immunity to manipulation makes him incredibly attractive to authentic people. When you're not desperate for connection, you attract higher quality connections. When you're not needy, you become magnetic to people who value independence. Quality people are drawn to psychological strength. They're attracted to someone who can't be pushed around, guilt-tripped, or emotionally manipulated. They respect boundaries, authenticity, and inner strength. The manipulation immunity that develops through solitude doesn't make you antisocial. It makes you anti-bullshit. And in a world full of manipulation, game playing, and emotional dependency, being anti-bullshit is a superpower. The man who loves solitude has cracked the ultimate code. When you need nothing from others, you can offer everything to the right people. When you're psychologically complete, you can engage with others from a position of strength rather than weakness. And strength, authentic strength, is the most attractive quality in the human experience. Te tri os for armatiam meet ashdi, te soli tw. Now comes the part that separates the warriors from the weaklings. How do you actually transform from a validation-seeking, approval-addicted social slave into a psychologically sovereign individual? The answer isn't pretty. It's not comfortable, and it's definitely not easy. But for those with the balls to go through the process, it's the most liberating experience you'll ever have. Phase 1, the digital detox detonation. You must begin by destroying your psychological dependency on external validation. This means systematically removing every digital dopamine dealer from your life. Delete social media apps. Not limit your usage, delete them completely. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Create what I call communication windows, specific times when you check messages, not the constant reactive pattern most people live in. The first 72 hours will feel like psychological withdrawal. Your brain will scream for the dopamine hits it's addicted to. You'll feel phantom notifications. You'll reach for your phone compulsively. This is your nervous system detoxing from artificial stimulation. Push through it. Phase 2, know it, silence immersion therapy. After digital detox, you must learn to be comfortable with silence. Start with 10 minutes of sitting in complete silence daily. No music, no podcasts, no mental distraction, just you and your thoughts. Gradually increase this to 30 minutes, then an hour. This will be torture initially. Your mind will race. Uncomfortable thoughts will surface. Suppressed emotions will demand attention. This is exactly what needs to happen. You're finally meeting yourself without distractions, and most people discover they don't like what they find. But here's the breakthrough. Once you can sit comfortably with your own mind for extended periods, you become psychologically unshakable. External chaos can't disturb someone who has made peace with internal silence. Phase 3A, the social pruning process. Now comes the ruthless part. You must eliminate relationships that drain your energy without adding value. This includes people who only contact you when they need something, friends who make you feel worse about yourself, Anyone who doesn't respect your boundaries, relationships based on mutual complaints rather than mutual growth, the social pruning process will be painful. You'll discover that many of your friendships were actually just familiar dependencies. Some people will be angry when you stop being available for their emotional dumping. Others will disappear when you stop providing constant validation. Let them go. Quality over quantity isn't just a saying. It's a lifestyle philosophy that separates the strong from the weak. Phase 40. Skill development in solitude. While others are socializing, you must be building. Choose 3 skills that genuinely interest you and dedicate the time you use to spend on social obligations to developing these skills. Read deeply instead of scrolling shallowly. Practice deliberately instead of consuming passively. Create instead of just consuming. The psychological payoff is enormous. Every skill you develop in solitude becomes a source of internal confidence that no one can take away from you. Your self-worth becomes tied to your capabilities, not to other people's opinions of you. Phase 5e, the authenticity integration. The final phase is the most dangerous. You must begin expressing your authentic thoughts and opinions, regardless of social approval. Start small. Disagree with something in conversation instead of nodding along. Express a controversial opinion you actually believe. Say no to requests that don't align with your values. This will terrify people who are used to your people-pleasing version. Some will try to guilt you back into compliance. Others will label you changed or difficult. This is actually confirmation that you're doing it right. The psychological shift, what happens during this transformation, isn't just behavioral. It's neurological. Brain imaging studies show that people who practice regular solitude develop stronger prefrontal cortex activity associated with decision-making and self-control, and reduced amygdala reactivity associated with fear and anxiety. You're literally rewiring your brain from external dependency to internal stability. The man who completes this transformation doesn't just become comfortable with solitude. He becomes addicted to the clarity, peace, and power it provides. He realizes that most social interaction is just mutual distraction from the real work of becoming who you're meant to be. But here's the ultimate psychological twist. Once you've mastered solitude, social interaction becomes a choice rather than a need. And choices made from strength are infinitely more powerful than choices made from weakness. You must choose: continue living as a psychological slave to other people's opinions, or begin the brutal but liberating journey towards psychological sovereignty. The transformation method isn't for everyone, but for those who complete it, the reward is ultimate freedom, the freedom to be authentically yourself in a world that profits from your insecurity. Here's what separates the elite from the masses. Elite individuals understand that true power comes from psychological sovereignty, not social dominance. Study the most powerful figures throughout history. Not the ones who craved attention, but the ones who commanded respect. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, spent his evenings in solitary reflection. Steve Jobs, despite running a massive corporation, made his most important decisions in solitary walks. Warren Buffett, one of the world's wealthiest men, spends 80% of his day reading alone. These aren't coincidences, they're patterns. The elite solitude advantage. Elite individuals understand something that escapes the masses. Solitude isn't isolation, it's incubation. While others are busy networking, gossiping, and seeking approval, elite minds are processing information, developing strategies, and making connections between ideas that social minds miss entirely. Consider the psychological research on creativity and innovation. Every major creative breakthrough occurs during periods of solitary reflection, not group brainstorming. The eureka moment happens when the mind is free to make unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. This requires sustained attention, deep thinking, and freedom from social distraction. The elite understand that their mind is their most valuable asset, and they protect it accordingly. They don't allow random people to occupy their mental real estate. They don't let social obligations fragment their attention. They don't sacrifice their mental clarity for social approval. The scarcity principle of elite psychology. Here's what most people miss about elite psychology. They operate on scarcity principles, not abundance principles. Their time is scarce, their attention is scarce, their energy is scarce, and they allocate these resources with surgical precision. The average person gives their attention to whoever demands it loudest. They say yes to social obligations out of guilt or fear of missing out. They scatter their focus across dozens of shallow relationships and meaningless activities. Elite individuals do the opposite. They guard their solitude jealously because they understand its value. They would rather have one meaningful interaction than 10 superficial ones. They would rather develop one deep skill than dabble in many shallow ones. This creates what psychologists call focused excellence, the ability to achieve extraordinary results in chosen areas because resources aren't dispersed across too many competing priorities. The elite emotional management system. Perhaps most importantly, elite individuals have developed superior emotional management systems through solitude practice. They don't outsource their emotional stability to other people. They don't depend on external validation for their self-worth. They don't allow other people's moods to determine their mental state. This emotional sovereignty creates several elite advantages: decision-making clarity. When emotions aren't dependent on social approval, decisions can be made based on logic and long-term consequences rather than short-term social pressure. Negotiation power. When you don't need the other person's approval, you can negotiate from a position of genuine strength rather than hidden desperation. Leadership presence. People are naturally drawn to individuals who seem emotionally unshakable. Emotional stability is magnetic in ways that neediness never can be. Crisis resilience. When external circumstances become chaotic, the person with internal stability becomes the natural leader others look to for guidance. The elite relationship dynamic. Here's where elite psychology becomes really powerful. Elite individuals attract higher quality relationships precisely because they don't need them. This seems paradoxical, but it's actually basic human psychology. People are attracted to strength and repelled by weakness. Neediness, desperation, and approval-seeking behavior are all forms of psychological weakness that repel quality people while attracting users and manipulators. But psychological sovereignty, the state of being complete within yourself, is incredibly attractive to other strong individuals. They recognize and respect someone who can't be manipulated, guilt-tripped, or emotionally controlled. Elite individuals build relationships based on mutual respect rather than mutual need. They connect with others from a position of strength rather than weakness. They offer value because they choose to, not because they need to. The elite time leverage. Elite individuals understand that time spent in solitude isn't time wasted, it's time invested. While others are busy being busy, elite minds are busy being productive. They use solitude for strategic thinking and planning, skill development and learning, creative problem solving, physical and mental recovery, deep work that requires sustained attention. This creates compound returns on investment. Every hour spent in productive solitude generates multiple hours of enhanced performance in all other areas of life. The masses misunderstand this and label elite individuals as antisocial or arrogant. But elite individuals don't care about mass opinion, they care about results. And the results speak for themselves. The elite mindset isn't about superiority over others, it's about sovereignty over yourself. And in a world full of psychologically dependent people, sovereignty is the ultimate competitive advantage. We've reached the final frontier of psychological development, the evolution from social dependence to complete psychological sovereignty. This is where boys become men, where followers become leaders, where the manipulated become untouchable. The untouchable transformation. When a man completes the journey from social dependency to solitude mastery, something profound happens. He doesn't just become comfortable being alone, he becomes psychologically untouchable. This isn't arrogance. This isn't antisocial behavior. This is the development of unshakable inner strength that makes external manipulation impossible. The untouchable man has transcended the psychological vulnerabilities that keep most people trapped in cycles of dependency, approval seeking, and emotional reactivity. He has achieved what Nietzsche called self-overcoming, the ability to become master of his own psychology. The 4 pillars of untouchable psychology. Pillar 1 teen. Emotional sovereignty. His emotions are internally generated, not externally triggered. His mood doesn't depend on how others treat him. His self-worth isn't borrowed from other people's opinions. His happiness isn't hostage to circumstances beyond his control. He has become his own emotional center of gravity. Pillar 20. Mental autonomy. His thoughts are his own. He cannot be gaslit because he trusts his own perception. He cannot be peer-pressured because he doesn't seek peer approval. He cannot be mentally manipulated because his mind is disciplined, focused, and clear. Pillar 30. Value independence. His values come from within, not from social consensus. He doesn't change his principles based on popular opinion. He doesn't compromise his integrity for social acceptance. He would rather be authentic and alone than fake and popular. Pillar 40. Purpose clarity. He knows why he exists. His purpose isn't borrowed from others or imposed by society. He has discovered his authentic calling through solitary reflection and deep self-examination. This gives him direction that social pressure cannot derail. The untouchable advantages, the psychological benefits of achieving untouchable status are extraordinary. Immunity to social pressure. He cannot be forced to do anything that contradicts his values. Social shame, guilt, tripping, and peer pressure become ineffective because he doesn't depend on group approval for his psychological well-being. Superior decision-making without the fog of social anxiety and approval-seeking. He can make decisions based on logic, values, and long-term consequences rather than short-term social comfort. Magnetic authenticity. People are drawn to genuine confidence and inner strength. The untouchable man's authenticity attracts quality individuals while repelling users and manipulators. Creative freedom without the need to conform to social expectations. He can explore ideas, take risks, and create original work that conventional minds wouldn't dare attempt. Leadership presence. Others naturally look to him for guidance because his emotional stability and clear thinking create trust and respect. The price of untouchability. But becoming untouchable requires sacrifices that most men aren't willing to make. You must sacrifice the comfort of fitting in for the strength of standing out. You must give up the easy dopamine hits of social media validation for the deeper satisfaction of genuine accomplishment. You must trade the illusion of popularity for the reality of authentic relationships. Most importantly, you must be willing to be misunderstood, criticized, and even rejected by people who are still trapped in the matrix of social dependency. They will call you arrogant, antisocial, or difficult because they cannot understand psychological sovereignty. The evolution is complete. When the transformation is complete, something remarkable happens. The man who was once desperate for social connection discovers that he has become the kind of person others desperately want to connect with. Not because he needs them, but because he has become genuinely valuable, skilled, confident, authentic, and strong. The ultimate paradox of human psychology reveals itself. The less you need others, the more they want to be around you. The more complete you become within yourself, the more attractive you become to others. The stronger your psychological foundations, the deeper the relationships you can build. But here's the final twist that makes this evolution so powerful. The untouchable man doesn't use his strength to dominate others. He uses it to elevate himself and, by example, inspire others to do the same. He becomes a lighthouse in the storm of social chaos, showing others that psychological freedom is possible. The journey from social dependency to psychological sovereignty isn't just personal development. It's human evolution, and in a world increasingly dominated by manipulation, distraction, and dependency, the man who achieves psychological untouchability doesn't just survive. He shows the rest of humanity what true strength looks like. The evolution is complete. The question is, do you have the strength to begin it? The choice is in front of you now, and it's the most important decision you'll ever make. You can continue living as a psychological slave, dependent on others for validation, addicted to social approval, trapped in the endless cycle of seeking external permission to feel good about yourself. You can keep performing your life instead of living it, borrowing your identity from others instead of building it yourself. or you can begin the brutal but liberating journey toward psychological sovereignty. The path isn't easy. Most men don't have the balls to walk it. Most are too comfortable in their chains to even recognize they're wearing them. Most would rather stay weak and accepted than become strong and misunderstood. But if you're different, if something inside you recognizes the truth in what you've heard today, then you know what must be done. Start tonight. Turn off your phone. Sit in silence. Face yourself without distraction. Begin the work of becoming psychologically untouchable. Comment, "I choose sovereignty," if you're ready to begin this transformation. Comment, "I choose strength," if you're willing to sacrifice social comfort for psychological power. Hit subscribe because this channel is for the elite few who understand that true strength comes from within, not from the crowd. This isn't content for the masses. This is training for the psychologically elite. And share this video with any man you know who's ready to stop being a slave and start being sovereign. But be warned, most people aren't ready for this level of truth. Share wisely. The man who masters solitude doesn't just survive in this world. He transcends it. He doesn't just live. He thrives in ways that make the socially dependent masses realize what they've been missing their entire lives. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. Choose strength. Choose sovereignty. The